it's funny. It's one of these things that it happened without a plan for the most part. Much of the career had been in the technology sector early on the development side, product management, but really the bulk of it had been in sales, promoted up in sales leadership. And I don't know, a few years back, just reached that point where I'd lost really the passion and interest in what I was doing. I wanted to do it. I wanted to change. Um, when you're 25 years into your career, it's kind of scary to make the change, but I did end up going back to school, studying Python, machine learning, business analytics, which allowed me to build upon my experience. So career-wise, moved into a new role, doing marketing analytics, using a machine learning platform. On the other side of things, I've always been passionate about music. Grew up in a musical household. My wife and I even played in local bands here. So I've always been passionate about it. And my daughters are musicians, so they would always encourage me to, tell the stories that they grew up listening to me talk about. And I've never been big on social media, but I don't know, about 2 years or so ago, just did some posts on TikTok, and one day one of them kind of took off, and from there it just grew. We're coming up on a year ago. I think it was March of last year. Bob Buckman at Sirius had reached out to me and just struck up a conversation to see where my interest was. At the time, I'd never even thought about going on air as a host. And being that I've never done it, that was never in my career path. He spent quite a bit of time mentoring me, getting me prepared for the audition process, and we went through the training. But yeah, I think we're coming up. I think it was March is when they reached out.
Okay, and have you just recently started doing this, or
Yeah,
is it?
this weekend will actually be my debut weekend. So I'll be on SiriusXM's Classic Vinyl on Saturday, and then Classic Rewind on Sunday. And then from that point forward, I'll be the evening host on Classic Rewind every Sunday evening. Yeah, some of my earliest memories are attached to songs. So whether it's I'd like to teach the world to sing, or Captain Tennille's "Love Will Keep Us Together." I mean, whenever I hear those songs, I have memories that take me back to very young days. My dad would listen to old country, Tom T. Hall, Patsy Cline. My mother was probably more diverse. She loved folk. I remember at a very young age, she would go and sit around with a bunch of other musicians at the campfire, and they'd just play acoustic guitar and sing Peter, Paul, and Mary, Puff the Magic Dragon, etc. So I started off probably strong in country, but it was around 1979, 1980. I started getting exposed to bands like Rush, Triumph, April Wine, Dio, and then it would go on from there. So by the time I got into the 80s, I was very much into more of the rock. But everything my mom had turned me on to, I mean, even Barry Manilow, she was a huge Barry Manilow fan. So I would spend time sitting at the piano, and she'd play Weekend in New England, and I would sing along with her. So music had become, and even to this day, when I look back in my memories, I might think of an event, and the way that I remember what year that event happened is because pretty much everything's attached to a song, and I can go, okay, well, that song was released this year, so this event happened that year. And I think a lot of that's just because of the way that she would always talk about music. I kind of just, I guess, replicated her mindset towards it. Now, at this point, I am given a playlist, and what I do is I take the playlist that they're providing me, and I kind of just work my style into it. So I'm very story oriented, and I'll just work my stories into the playlist they provide. In terms of my internal identity, I probably always default back to what I was listening to when I probably had my greatest development as a guitarist, which would be bands like Dokken, Scorpions, Iron Maiden, so the rock. But I really do love all forms of music. I mean, at a very young age, I fell in love with Luciano Pavarotti. I'm a big fan of classical music. Absolutely love the impressionist composers such as Debussy and Satie. So a huge fan of classical. Still love a lot of the 80s rock, but I also have a lot of respect for a lot of country guitarists, both past and present. There was a period, probably mid to late 80s, where I started getting into David Gilmour and Stevie Ray Vaughan, and I would say those guitarists had the most profound impact on me, because up until that point, I think a lot of guitarists, a lot of musicians go through this phase where it's all about how fast, how complex can I play? So the more complicated the riff, the faster the riff, then the better the musician I must be. And then you listen to guys like Stevie Ray Vaughan and David Gilmour. It's the exact opposite. It's about how much emotion can you put into a single note. And, that was a very profound, lesson that I've actually incorporated in a lot of other areas of my life throughout the years.